right, how's our cinematography division doing?
Oh, Marvin.
Mobby. You're going to be in the movie.
Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah. They'll... Okay, very nice, thank you. So, when you were just doing that exercise, did anybody hear something that someone else said that would be useful for everybody else to hear? Did anybody have an example that was particularly useful or poignant that would kind of make the point? Anybody? Yeah? Do you mind standing up so everybody can hear, Frank?
Well, I was pointing out to Lynn, my partner, my dad easily could have forced us to do the weeding in the garden. He's like, here's 12 rows of onions. Like, let's go out right now, right now. But what he did, he empowered us in a way. He said, okay, by the time I get home from work tomorrow, I expect that to be done. He said, you can choose to do it in the cool of the morning or in the 100-degree part of the day. It's up to you. But if it's not done by the time I get home, I will drag you. And I mean, I don't know if he ever would have or not, but we actually were empowered to do the smart way. We'd get out at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we were wet from the dew in the grass up to here, but we knew it was a lot more comfortable than 100 degrees.
Okay, good example. Good. Anybody else have another example of something where that you think would be good for everybody else to hear? Okay, sometimes people do, sometimes people don't. Yeah? Come on, we know it's good. Come on, Ken. Can you stand up so everybody can hear?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I just came back from Peru. I was doing, 4 people we did wheelchair assessments for kids with disabilities. I just put out the word that we were doing this. I needed to raise $1,500, and it just came like that.
Wow.
And so the power of people giving.
Yes.
And the enabling that it allowed me to do.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. See, you forced him to do it, which was a good thing. So sometimes force is good. It's not always bad. Sometimes it's good. Okay, so in just a couple of minutes here, we're actually going to practice one of the laser talks like we would practice on a Saturday. So I want to show you how we got there. Because what we're going to do is practice, and you don't necessarily have to agree with what we're working on legislatively. I'm just going to walk you through how we got there. So we worked with the last Congress, and the House of Representatives, for the first time in the House, passed a bill to deal with climate change called Waxman-Markey. 1,600-page bill. And our biggest issue with Waxman-Markey was there's a view among some people in Washington that you can't pass climate legislation unless you get coal and oil to agree by including offsets in the bill. Right. And so what happens is Waxman-Markey was supposed to be a cap-and-trade program where you would buy a permit that then you could trade, which we had problems with that also. But at any rate, what they said is you don't actually have to buy the permit. You can just fund an offset project. So here's how offset projects work. You say to Exxon, you don't have to pay to pollute. What you can do is agree not to cut down a piece of the Amazon forest. Well, that sounds good, doesn't it? Because we don't want the Amazon forest to be cut down, do we? But if you have Exxon supposedly protect one piece, what makes you think that some other piece of the forest isn't going to be cut down? Because if a piece of the Amazon forest is going to be cut down, it's going to be cut down because some need is being met. So what it means is some of the other pieces are going to be cut down for paper or clearing land for farming. So we thought it was kind of a sneaky, dishonest way of dealing with it. One of the recent projects that got approved in Nigeria, I don't remember which of the oil companies, but they're essentially being paid to stop burning their gas flares in Nigeria. Okay, we want that, right? We don't want them to burn their gas flares, right? Doesn't that seem like a good thing? Well, Nigeria passed a law in 1985 saying it's illegal to burn gas flares. So now we're going to pay Exxon and say, thank you for keeping the law 30 years later. So we didn't like that. We thought that in a certain sense we were dealing with this in a dishonest fashion. That it sets up things that are, shady. You can't really see if it would actually work. We went over and looked at the Senate. And we couldn't see 60 votes for anything in the Senate. We tried to work with, Carrie Lieberman We tried to work with Cantwell Collins. You know, we tried everything, and there just weren't 60 votes. So we said, okay, we're going to have to come up with a new approach. And it's going to be after the next election. The Democrats are going to lose votes. So we're going to have to get more Republican votes. So it's going to have to be something that's more bipartisan. We didn't expect the Democrats to lose that many seats. So it wouldn't be that uphill. But that it was something that could get bipartisan support. So what we did is we wrote our own bill, a 2-page bill that Lynn actually mentioned called a fee and dividend approach. One of the volunteers from Oakland, a woman named Lori Williams, wrote it. She actually wrote 7 pages, and one of the beauties about Marshall, our founder, he's an old, tough guy from Waco, Texas. Don't need that, don't need that. He's got his red pen, nope, nope, nope. 2 pages, okay, excellent. So we started telling our volunteers to go around and tell everybody we have a bill. And then we started taking flack from people. And they said, you can't say you have a bill. Only members of Congress can have a bill. And we thought, oh, no, we're in trouble. You know, the bill police found us. So then on Earth Day 2 years ago, Jim Hansen walked out on the Capitol Mall with our 2-page bill and said, this is the answer. This is exactly what we did. So we went back to the bill police and said, how do you like me now, bill police? So here's what that 2-page bill says. It says, we put a straightforward tax, fee, whatever you want to call it, on carbon-based emissions. We start by charging $15 a ton for all CO2 emissions or equivalents. We raise it at $10 a ton for the next 10 years. What we want to make sure is that we can guarantee is that in the minimum, within 10 years, coal is expensive as wind and solar. Because we're not going to make the transition to renewable energy until they're on a cost-competitive basis. So the first thing we do is we put a cost, just like the economists say we need to, a direct cost. Where do we do it? At the oil well, at the coal mine, and then we make an adjustment at the border. We've been working with the top legal experts in the world who understand how the WTO works. And what they've told us is, if we have a fee on carbon in our country and other countries don't, we can make an adjustment at the border to protect our manufacturers. Okay, so what our fee says, a fee at the oil well, at the coal mine, and adjustment at the border. But here's what we're proposing to do that has not been debated on the floor of the House. You take every single dollar and send it back to American households as a monthly dividend. So every single dollar. Why every dollar? Well, at least for 3 reasons, probably more. 1, if we put a fee, a tax on carbon-based fuels, what's going to happen to American consumers' energy costs? Right. They go up. So for instance, if you tax oil at $15 a ton, gasoline is going to go up 13 cents a gallon. So it's going to cost people more to drive their car. So we're going to say send all the money back to people to protect that cost. So if you send all the money back, 70% of American households come out even or ahead. Now, if you have a couple of airplanes and a boat and a few cars, your energy costs are going to go up. But for most people, it's actually going to go down because of the monthly dividend check you get. There's 2 other reasons we want to give all the money back. Many Republicans have signed a tax pledge saying they won't vote for any legislation that increases government revenue. Ours doesn't, because ours takes all the money and sends it back to American households. So they can honor their pledge, do what they said they do. I'm a big believer in if you say something, do it, but still vote the right way. But the third is this. In addition to putting a fee on carbon, we eliminate all energy subsidies. And what we say is, let's let the market go to work. And if you say to the market, guess what? Wind, solar, geothermal's going to be better off than coal, and you can see exactly when. We think there's all types of banks, venture capitalists, and entrepreneurs that come flying off the sidelines. We know we can sell that to Republican offices because it's a market-based solution. Now, what's happening in the market right now? We're still the best developer of technology in the world, aren't we? But then who manufactures the wind and solar components? China. I mean, I hate to be Mr. Hyperbole, but sometimes I do love when I'm sitting down with members of Congress and they argue with me about that. I say, so do you want your grandchildren to speak Mandarin? It's what's going to happen if you don't watch it. I just do it to entertain myself. So anyway, we're proposing you put a straightforward fee on carbon, you take all the money and send it back to American households, okay? So that's what we've been pushing. And just so you know, behind closed doors, we get a lot of receptivity from Republican members of Congress. Mm-hmm. We need to now make that transition from inside their office to the public. They're in a very difficult political environment. The Tea Party has backed moderate Republicans into a corner. And so what we need to do is show them that there's enough support in the community that they can make the courageous vote, because this is going to be a tough vote for them. Okay, so I wanted to give you that background so that I could show you what's going to happen when we do this talk. First of all, any questions about that piece, though? Yeah?
Well, wouldn't the congressman say, well, how could 100% go back? Because you have to pay for the paper and the envelopes and the checks. And
Yeah, there'll be about a less than half of 1% that has to be covered to cover the same cost that they do for Social Security for sending out checks. So, you know, you can't honestly say 100% will go back knowing that you are talking about a very small administrative fee because the infrastructure is already set up for previous refund checks, Social Security, et cetera.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have anybody in Congress that has supported this particular bill at this point?
We, you know, for the last year, we kept telling Democrats who wanted to support it, hold off till we get a Republican co-sponsor. So we had several Democrats say, I want to introduce it, and we said it's going to die unless we get a Republican co-sponsor. Pete Stark of California 3 weeks ago introduced something really, really close, and we said, go ahead and do it because in this Congress we're not going to get a Republican co-sponsor. The difference between Stark's bill and what we're proposing is he takes a small portion of the revenues and sends it to deficit reduction. Now, we went to the conservative Republicans and said, can you live with this? And they say, no, that's growing government, even though it's paying down the deficit. So Stark introduced that. John Larson's office of Connecticut, we've been working very closely with. We think he'll introduce something close to this later in the year. He uses a slightly different mechanism in that rather than sending a dividend check, he wants to lower payroll taxes. We prefer the dividend because if you lower payroll taxes, it lower costs to the employer and the employee. So it doesn't protect the poor Americans as well. Actually, unfortunately, there was a Republican from South Carolina, Bob Inglis, who introduced something in last Congress that was really close, and he got destroyed in the primary in South Carolina, got 28% of the vote. And he was an incredible, courageous man. Some of the things he said were so remarkable. I remember an interview with him in the Miami Times where they said, how can a conservative Republican from one of the most conservative districts in the country propose a new tax? And his answer was, if you're not going to do the right thing, go home. Those are the kind of politicians I like. He unfortunately went home. We still work closely with him. But now, on the Senate side, Maria Cantwell, her bill last year, the CLEAR Act, was in some ways different. It was a cap instead of a fee, and she was proposing 75% of the money going back. We've been working very closely with them, and I think making a pretty compelling case that if we can get that 75 to 100, we have to get something we can match up with the House, and if we can't, otherwise we're just kidding ourselves. So I do think we can make progress with her and what she wants to do also. Okay. Other questions about that? Yeah?
How close is this to Australia's carbon?
Pretty close. Well, I think Australia started at $20 a ton, but then again, the mechanism they used was closer to what Larson did. Just so you know, this is one of the most remarkable political accomplishments in a long time. The Prime Minister, well, I don't know what the woman's name is in Australia. Australia gets 80% of their energy from coal. They fought this tooth and nail, and she pushed through a carbon tax a few weeks ago. What she does is she does a tax shift, where there's other taxes that are lowered in the Australian economy, and I can't even tell which ones they are. It's just said that there will be equivalent taxes lowered in Australia, but it starts at $20 a ton. Yeah. Okay. All right, good. So anyway, I wanted to give you that background so that when we do this practice laser talk like we would talk, that you would understand what the background of it is, okay? So anyway, here, pass those down, and pass those down, and pass those down, and hopefully I kept one for myself. Okay, there's the next one. Good, because I pandered them all out. Thank you. Okay, does everybody have one? Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. This is very often how we would do this when we practice on Saturday. The first time I'm going to read it out loud. The second time we go through, what's going to happen is when we get to the underlined parts, I'm going to start talking, and with great enthusiasm and gusto, you're going to read that part. Okay? Then the third time, you're going to turn it over, and you're going to deliver the talk as best you can with no notes to your partner. Okay? So listen, there's no test. You can't fail. Don't fret about this. Okay, fee and dividend equals jobs and energy independence. Leaders in Congress are now saying it is unlikely that a climate bill will be passed this year. They say that with unemployment high and the economy very shaky, now is not the time to put a price on carbon that will increase energy costs. On the contrary, this is the perfect time to pass legislation that puts a price on carbon, provided we take the right approach. If we're looking to create new jobs for Americans, ramping up production of clean energy technology holds great potential. We can realize that potential by making clean energy competitive with fossil fuels. The way to do that is with a gradually increasing fee on carbon. If we take the revenue from the carbon fee and distribute it equally to all Americans, we shield households from the impact of higher energy costs associated with the carbon fee. We call this the carbon fee and dividend. In fact, most families would receive more of a dividend than they would pay for increased energy costs. As we transition to clean energy made in America, we'll rely less and less on foreign oil. The less oil we have to import, the more our money stays here in the U.S., where it helps our economy and creates American jobs. The best benefit of transitioning to clean energy, of course, is that it will lower the level of carbon dioxide that threatens the stability of our climate. So the time is really right to pass a carbon fee and dividend bill. It would create new jobs, stimulate our economy, give us energy independence, and head off climate change. As President Obama said in the State of the Union address, the nation that leads the clean energy economy will be the nation that leads the global economy. Okay, so this time when I read it, when I get to the underlined part, you're going to, with great energy and gusto. Okay. Fee and dividend equals jobs and energy independence. Leaders in Congress are now saying that it is unlikely that a climate bill will be passed this year. They say that with unemployment high and the economy very shaky, now is not the time to put a price on carbon that will increase energy costs. On the contrary, this is the perfect time to pass legislation that
puts a price on carbon,
provided we take
the right approach.
If you're looking to
Create new jobs for Americans.
Ramping up production of clean energy technology holds great potential. We can realize that potential by making
Clean energy competitive with fossil fuels.
The way to do that is with a
Gradually increasing fee.
on carbon. If we take the revenue from that carbon fee and
Distribute it equally to all Americans.
we shield households from the impact of higher energy costs associated with the carbon fee. We call this the
Carbon fee and dividend.
In fact,
Most families would receive more of a dividend.
than they would pay for increased energy costs. As we transition to clean energy made in America, we'll rely less and less on foreign oil. The less oil we have to import, the
More our money stays here in the U.S.
where it helps our economy and
Creates American jobs.
the best benefit of transitioning to clean energy, of course, is that it will
Lower the level of carbon dioxide that threatens the stability of our climate.
So the time is really right to pass a carbon fee and dividend bill. It will create new jobs, stimulate our economy, give us energy independence, and head off climate change. As President Obama said in the State of the Union address, the nation that
Leads the clean energy economy.
will be the nation that leads the
Global economy.
Okay, so now turn that over and gaze over at your partner for a second. And whichever one of you has the most romantic eyes, you go first. Hard question, right? Hi. How you doing?
I just
Mark.
poked my head in.
Yeah, what's that?
I just poked my head in to see what was going on.
Great, good to have you here.
I like it.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay, now here comes the tricky part. Cool. Hey, I have a question for you. Do you think it would be possible on the drive back, the way we organize our groups is there's like one person that exists as a group leader that we send out the information through and kind of organizes where the calls are going to be. Do you think you guys could come up with one person that would be the point person for that between now and when you get back to Nebraska?
Well, we should talk about it.
Okay.
I'll tell you, one of the great ironies here is there was one person you left behind
Yeah.
who couldn't come.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's most likely to get this.
Okay, that's fine. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be someone that was here.
Yeah.
It's really that you have someone that we can kind of funnel the information through so that everybody's not getting inundated with information.
He's the staff person for Nebraskans for Peace,
Great.
which is a statewide organization.
Okay.
Been around a long time.
Okay.
And he
Cool.
really wants to work on this.
Okay. Well, I'll check in. I get back Friday, and then I'll circle back with you guys early next week and see what we came up with. Okay. All right. No breaks.
No?
No breaks. Okay, but here's what is going to happen. In just a moment, I'm going to break them into small groups to practice a meeting with a member of Congress.
Okay.
I tell them during that break that if they need, while they're in that small group, if they need to use the restroom, to use it.
Okay. All right. We got cookies. When do we give them cookies?
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
right. There's that point, huh?
Yeah.
Okay,
How
let's-
about that's the incentive for after they get through that?
Oh, they're meeting. They can go have a cookie.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
And tell
a
them
reward.
you're being a taskmaster and you're not allowing bathroom breaks, but if you have to go, anytime.
Oh,
great.
excellent. You know
And
what?
They get a cookie after.
You know what? If you bring me a cookie right now, I will remember to say that. Oatmeal. Yeah.
What is the relationship between your group and 350.org?
We actually work with everybody, and we coordinate with them a lot. We support all their events. We've been trying to bring everybody together, all the different groups. We work closely with McKibben, May Bouvet, all those people. There's no official, thing like that, but we.
The group of Lincoln, it seems like it would be most likely to latch on to this. It's already put together.
Yes.
It's 350.org.
Yeah, and
Part of that.
Yeah, and it's a natural thing because there's an event like once a year.
Yeah.
Well, then you need a whole bunch of activity in between them.
Right,
So
right, exactly.
we've had a lot of people who've created those events who've become, organizers of CCL chapters also. Yeah. Yeah, that's the biggest complaint people have to me is, why isn't everybody working together? Because there's people involved.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Other than that, it's so simple.
I've made so many arguments like, why can't the whole thing just get together?
Right.
Well, because.
Right. Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. Okay. What we're going to do, listen, this is a very long, complicated instruction that's going to go right here, so you've got to pay close attention. What's going to happen is, in just a moment, I'm going to organize you into 3 groups in the room. And each of those groups is going to plan a meeting with a member of Congress. Okay? I'm going to go through an outline of what we're going to do. During that time, while we're planning that, because we'll have about 10 or 15 minutes to do it, if you need to use the restroom, you can. Okay? Then what will happen is, you'll identify what member of Congress you're going to meet with, and I'll come over and I'll be that person, and I'll pretend I'm, Senator Roberts or whoever, Senator Nelson, member of the House. It doesn't matter. We'll run through a practice meeting, and then after you're done with your meeting, there's cookies in there, so you get a reward. Okay. This reminds me, one time when my daughter was 3, she was out in the backyard. We had this dog, Max, who was like the world's dumbest dog ever, but the greatest dog ever. And so I go, what are you doing? She goes, I'm training Max. And I go, well, what's the system here? And she goes, well, if he does what I tell him to do, I give him a cookie. And I go, what if he doesn't? She goes, then I give him a cracker. I'm like, oh, okay. No wonder that Max is such a smart dog. Also, if you did not get a chance to fill out one of these forms when you first came in, they're on that table, so when you get done with your individual meeting, please fill out one of these, okay? This is so we can sell your names to Nigerian princes who want you to win money. Okay. So I want to walk you through, yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you entertain a question?
Absolutely.
In this particular idea, I like it very well. I just have a question about, when we're talking about fossil fuels, what is the intent of this process as it relates to automobiles?
Yeah. It's what's going to happen is, so for instance, there's not specifically anything that says about automobiles or planes or any of the ways we transport. obviously there's huge efficiencies to be gotten there. We're going for the huge home run here, which is putting a price on carbon is the single biggest thing we can do, then all the fallout happens. So you naturally get more efficiencies in cars because the market and consumers can see that those kind of fuels are going to become more expensive. It obviously immediately drives much more incentive towards electric cars. So rather than dealing with the pieces, we're going through for the biggest piece. Okay? Yeah.
Are you at all considering in this process of some like transition from say coal in power plants over to natural gas?
You know, we're not worried about that at all. We know that when we put the price on it, that takes care of itself.
Okay.
So once we get this done, there's going to be about 10,000 other issues we should take on. But right now, we're going to stay focused on the home run until we get it. Yeah, good question.
The market basically sets the table, and then everybody responds to the market.
Yeah, good response.
Two-part.
Yeah.
What happens to the renter who has no control over the energy efficiency of his or her house?
Yeah. So they're going to get the same rebate that the homeowner would get. So they do get the money to deal with any increase in energy cost. They have a choice about whether they turn their thermostat up and down and maybe put a sweatshirt on or not. So they have a lot of the same things. You know, there's always going to be some exceptions here and there. You know, I got some pushback last night about, well, you know, this is going to hurt people in transportation more than some people. It's going to hurt people in farming potentially than some people. Sure. This is the best solution we can find, the fairest. If someone can come up with something better, we're not dogmatic about the solution. We're dogmatic about the physics we need to deal with, and we've come up with the best one we have. There's always going to be little pockets where nothing's going to be perfect. But this is the best thing by far we can find so far. Yeah?
I like what you're saying as an example. We have a new local in Lawrence, which I consider myself, but a lot of people in there probably know Eric Kirkendall in the art community. And Eric was a planner who worked against the diesel truck hub in Gardner, Kansas.
Yeah.
And I have friends in Austin, Texas that I visited in 2008. And I-35 is designed as a giant naphtha diesel semi-trailer truck artery. And we cannot lobby against the Teamsters, the truck company owners, all those things. But that's a huge amount of diesel particulate pollution. And so if we try to disassemble it to switch it to rail, that's a whole problem argument.
Right.
So you're starting with the carbon tax. When I think about diesel trucking industry, sounds much easier to succeed.
Yeah. Yep. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so here's our outline of what we do for meeting with member of Congress. Let me tell you what's not on here that we're assuming you're going to do. We're assuming before you sit down with a member of Congress, you're going to do research on them so that you know what they're really proud of, what they feel really great about that they've accomplished. We also figured to do the research so you know what really annoys them, so you know not to bring that up. Let me tell you one of the things you absolutely must be prepared. If you go into a Republican office in the United States Congress and you say, what is the fastest way for us to achieve energy independence, they're going to tell you two things. Build nuclear plants, offshore drilling. Okay, so you've got to anticipate what they're going to say so that you respond, not react. See, if they say, build nuclear plants, and you go, have you not been paying attention? Hello, Japan. End of meeting. So also, one of the things we're trying to do here is we're not just paying attention to this meeting. What we're wanting to do is set up a basis where 5 meetings from now, 10 meetings from now, we can accomplish things because we're developing a deep partnership with them. So you need to do research on them, not to know the issues they're excited or annoyed about, but also how you can anticipate what they might say that could throw you off. Sometimes they like to play a game called Get the Activist. Right? It's fun for them. Oh, let's get the activist. Oh, watch them. They jumped on nuclear. So as long as you're ready, it's like, yeah, okay. Let me tell you what I say. They say we build nuclear plants. I say, well, that's interesting. Jim Hansen, who was our keynote speaker for our conference, says we need to do that also. I don't agree with him, but he says it, so at least I know it doesn't create CO2 emissions once they're built. It allows us to say, okay, it's not something I necessarily agree with, but we can move on. It doesn't have to be the end of the discussion. It's just something that allows to keep moving things forward.
What is your answer to the offshore drilling?
The offshore drilling is, again, it's something that I'm opposed to. I think we can find all the energy we need from wind, solar, geothermal. I understand you and I might have a difference of opinion of that, but I think I can show you a plan where we can get everything we need from renewable sources. So, so the first thing we do is thank them for meeting with us, introduce ourselves, and then I say briefly, because if you have a 15-minute meeting, it takes you 12 minutes to introduce everybody. I know all of us are important, but it might be just to say we're all here from Citizens Climate Lobby. That might be a good enough introduction. And then here's the real key to it. The third point wrote here is acknowledgement, appreciation, respect, and gratitude. Here's the only policy we have in this organization. The only policy we have is that when you sit down with a member of Congress, the basis of your sitting down with them must be appreciation, respect, acknowledgement, and gratitude for their public service. And if you can't do them, then don't go. If you can't do it, then don't go, because that's not us. We're not the angry, yelling people. Listen, I know for some people that I disagree with absolutely. I know they're a parent or a grandparent. I know they love their kids. They love their grandkids. I know we can find some commonality. You know, I was doing a group down at the University of Alabama, and 30 students there, and they were going to prepare for a meeting with Senator Jeff Sessions. So we got to this point, and so I said, okay, so what do you appreciate and admire about Senator Sessions? And they look at me like, surely you jest, sir. So they stared at me for about 5 minutes. It was like this. You know that whole thing of, I'm not talking first? So finally, one young woman raised her hand, and she said, well, we're all science and engineering majors here, and actually Senator Sessions has got a lot of money for our schools. So here's the next question. Here's the tricky part. We don't say this to butter people up. Do you genuinely appreciate that? And they said, yeah, we actually do. Okay, good. Well, then we can begin to plan a meeting. Because ours is always going to be that we're grateful that people are still in public service. It's a hard business to be in. Then we tell them exactly what we want. We're here to request that you put a fee on carbon-based fuels and that you give all the money back to American households. Now, I'm going to come back to that at the end of the meeting. What I'd like to do is find out a little bit more about what some of your priorities are and some of the things you'd like to see with energy and climate policy. So we tell them what we want, but we tell them we're going to come back and ask for that at the end. Then what we want to do is see if we can get questions that we ask them that get them in a dialogue with us to see where we can find common ground to work this out with them. Okay? It's going to be a whole different deal depending upon who you're meeting with, right? So, for instance, we put here, what did you like or dislike about Boxer, Kerry, Waxman Markey, or Cantwell Collins from the 111th Congress? So if the only one of those from the House was Waxman Markey, Boxer, Kerry, Cantwell Collins were in the Senate. What do you think would be the fastest way for the United States to become the leader in creating renewable, clean jobs? So that then we can start to talk about the bullet points inside of a dialogue, not going in there and lecturing them about what we want them to do. Do you view reducing our dependence on foreign oil as a national security issue? Do you think our current policies regarding clean air and clean water reflect good stewardship of the planet? So here's what we're wanting to do. We're wanting for you to get a few of the key points from the laser talk in, but done in a discussion with them. So if you go into a Republican office who was in the House of Representatives and you say, what did you like or dislike about Waxman Markey? They're going to say, it was a huge bureaucracy, bloated growth of government thing. And I think you could honestly say, yeah, I had big problems with that also. That's why we were proposing something much simpler than that. So I think you can find common ground even with a policy you may have wanted to push through. Then you come back to your request. Here's what we're asking you to do. They're generally going to say, get me your language, I'll look into it, and you'll set up a follow-up process with their aide. Okay, so the follow-up is going to be with the aide. Ask the aide how you want to be followed up with. Do you want it by phone? Do you want it email, etc.? I'm sorry, I skipped one thing here. One of the things we want you to do at the very start of the meeting is ask them how much time they have. We want to tell people that we respect their time. So we say, how much time do you have? With members of Congress, usually the meeting is going to be 15 minutes. Usually with aides, it's going to be a half hour. One of the ways we know what we're doing is working is when they ask us to stay. So you'll see here at the bottom, we ask someone to take different roles. Someone should be the timer who says, you know what? You said we could have 15 minutes are up. So we don't want to just go over by default. We want to force them to say, no, you know what? Stay here longer. You know, I was in a meeting at, you know Darrell Issa, the head of the House Oversight Committee? I was in a meeting with his chief of staff a few weeks ago where the scheduler came in 4 times saying, your next appointment's here. And he said, no, these are the reasonable people. These are people I can work with. Now, this is someone who disagrees with us 100% on policy, but we can work with them. We're making a human connection. Yeah.
When you set up the meeting in the first place, what do you tell them who you are? In other words, how do you ask for the meeting?
It's usually we're asking to talk about climate and energy policy. Yeah. Yeah. The local group in the district want to talk about climate and energy policy. Yeah. In fact, we'll get you all, Amy has developed this whole template and the right email and how many times you call them and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah. Then there's this really interesting thing we do at the end. So if you talk to them and you ask them about Democrats or Republicans, what do you think they say? They're all blockheads. They're screwing everything up. So we don't ask them that. No. No, we don't.
That's good.
We say to them, who do you like working with on the other side of the aisle? Now, what do you think they say? They give us names every single time. Here's one of the most interesting ones. So we go into Senator Inhofe's office, and we say, now it's with an aide, who does Senator Inhofe like working with? You know who he says? Barbara Boxer. Wow. So if you're talking two extremes of the political spectrum, one is on one side and one on the other side, but he says, no, I like working with Barbara Boxer. So here's what we have. We have a culture where everybody says, this is the worst it's ever been. I don't know whether it's the worst or not. That's an assessment. But I know I can chip away at it one conversation at a time. So every time we sit down with someone, we say, who do you like working with? I think it just helps for them to say out loud, I like working with this woman or that guy. So we're going to keep chipping away at people can work together every time we get in front of someone. We can't get in front of everybody, but we're going to do it with the people we sit with. Okay, so questions about this before I break you up into small groups? Yeah?
Do you do anything further with that information about Boxer?
Yeah, we do. We almost always go back to that office and said, hey, Senator Boxer's office, Inhofe says that they like working with you. Can you tell us projects you've worked on together? Is a chance that we could get you to sponsor legislation together? We do try and work that. Yeah. Okay.
And do you develop a database? I mean, you said
Yeah, we keep this, we've got this debrief form of every meeting we had, and it should be better than it is, but at least we have the information in, and we have this team and we look for trends. I don't. I torture them and make them do it. And then come back, any trends yet? But the really, really remarkable thing about this organization is it gives a lot of people who are really smart and really committed a chance to step up and take a big piece of it. For instance, we got a bunch of pushback in the first national conference 2 years ago that going to a green economy would kill jobs. So one of the volunteers who teaches at the University of Villanova said, you know what, I don't think that's right. I think that's mythology. So he compiled 74 different independent reports to actually see what happens to the economy when you go to renewable with respect to jobs. So for instance, what do you find out? Well, there are 82,000 coal mining jobs in the U.S. If you add in travel and everything else, there's 184,000 coal mining jobs. The Department of Energy predicts 500,000 wind jobs by 2030. So it ends up, if you don't deal with mythology, if you deal into actually the data, there's nothing but upside to the jobs of going to renewable energy. So this is just a compilation of 74 independent studies and simply putting them all together. You can pull this off our website called Building the Green Economy. So that was just one volunteer said, this is needed, I'm going to do it. I told you Lori Williams wrote our bill. Lene Pentagle wrote our song. You might even get to hear that later tonight. Oh, right. You live so far away, you couldn't go get your guitar. Yeah.
How well known is the citizens' climate lobby amongst Congress?
Well, let's see. This year to date, we have made, this year through September, so that doesn't include the whole year, we have made 224 visits to congressional offices this year so far. We're young. We're 3 years old. So, some fairly well, some would remember, some might not know us at all. I think one of the reasons that so many people, more people are coming at us than we know what to do with right now is because Jim Hansen, everywhere he talks, says, if you want to solve this, you need to join CCL. So that's been having people come at us from more places than we can almost answer the phone right now. Yeah.
Have you been able to get past congressional representatives to join the group to speak to current?
That's a really good point. So obviously Bob Inglis has been willing to do that, the guy from South Carolina who wrote the bill. The one that's been really interesting is we've been talking a lot with former Secretary of State Schultz, who's 90 now, who worked in Reagan and Bush administration. He wants to do exactly what we want to do, and here's what the help he asked us to do initially was how to explain a fee and dividend approach to Republican senators. So we gave him what we considered a fairly good way of doing that. We've compiled a pretty good list of economists from previous administrations, Laffer from Reagan, Mankey from Bush, Shapiro from Clinton, who all push this. So we don't have as big a corral of those we want, but we're getting a pretty good one. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First row, turn your chairs around so you become a group with this row. Third row, turn your chairs around so you become a group with that row. And fifth row, turn around, you become a group with that row. So now, okay, so first of all, get in a little circle there. Okay, now remember, when you finish this, you do get a cookie, so there's a reward. It's a new part of the group start that wasn't there before.